start? Yep. All right. Yes? Okay. All right, we're ready to start. Welcome to the Broward Spiritist Society. So, tonight we're going to be talking about the desert of the soul. And before we go into the subject, let me tell you my sources. Okay? So, for this lecture, I used these books. Okay? But the one that really was the main source for this lecture is number 5, The Time of Self-Encounter by Vassandro Klinge. So this lecture was basically based on this book from Vassandro Klinge. So when I read it, it brought me so many insights and so much information. It was such a touching theme and such a touching book that then I decided to write a lecture about it using other sources that would complement the subject that was in there. So what is the desert of the soul? So when we think about the desert, we think about this arid, dry, hot place, that suffocates us. It suffocates us during the day, and at night it freezes us because it's so cold. So it's such a special and different place because it can have these extremes, very hot during the day and very cold at night. So if we look around us and if we look in our lives, there are moments when we suffer. And the situation we are living nowadays, we see that there are a lot of people suffering. Suffering for being home, suffering for not having work, suffering for having to feed their families and not having the means to do so. And then people suffer. People suffer also because they have to be in the front lines helping other people and being there strong and keep going despite the fact that they are also vulnerable to the situation. So sometimes we just crumble and then we sit and we suffer, and the suffering is so deep inside that a lot of things don't make sense. We don't find a reason, we don't find the whys. But then we look around and sometimes we are surrounded by other people with the same emotional problems. Hopelessness, guilt, anger, hurt, the lack of faith, all of these settle into our being. And then we find ourselves in a desert. In a desert where there is nothing around us but ourselves. So what do we do when we find ourselves in the desert? But first of all, what makes us go to the desert? How do we get there? How do we get all of these feelings inside of us? So it says in the Gospel, according to Spiritism, if you divided the types of suffering of life in 2 parts, one of those that man cannot avoid, another of tribulations, whose first cause is himself, by their negligence and their excesses, you would see that this last one supersedes a lot in number on the first. It is therefore evident that the man is the author of most of their afflictions, and that they could be avoided if you always acted with wisdom and prudence. So right here in this very own paragraph, we have the answer, what makes us go into this desert. It's we cause this suffering to ourselves. We cause it. And we cause it, and then we don't know how to get out of this desert. Because it's very easy to be disturbed. It's very easy to be angry. It's very easy to be unsatisfied. But how do I revert all that? And it keeps going. Our sense of immortality, our thoughts that this life in the flesh is infinite, causes us to become arrogant, rebellious, leading us to the desert. That says Rosando Klinge in the book that I mentioned before. So, I'm sorry, I went too fast. It is no less certain that these miseries are the result of our breaking God's laws. If we observe these laws, we would be happy. If you don't overcome the limit necessary for the satisfaction of our needs, we will not have diseases that are consequences of the excesses and the vicissitudes to those diseases cause. If we limit our ambition, we will not fear ruin. If we don't climb higher than we can, we will not fear fall. If we are humble, we won't suffer the disappointments of humiliated pride. If you practice the law of charity, we won't be even slanderous nor jealous and avoid the quarrels and divisions. If we don't do anybody any harm, we will not fear the revenge, and etc. So all of this is in the gospel according to Spiritism. And this is like a recipe, you know. If you read it, if you understand it, it's a recipe for your life. Because it says, if we limit our ambition, we're not going to have any fear of being ruined, of losing everything, of not having anything. If we don't climb higher than we can, we're not going to fear the fall. So why am I going to climb a 12-foot mountain if I cannot do that? If we are humble, we won't suffer the disappointments of humiliated pride. So here we have it. You know, we go to the desert because we don't follow the recipe. If we followed all of the teachings, everything that we've been learning throughout the days, the months, the years that we've been in the Spiritist Center, and we're talking about Spiritist centers because we are in one now. But in many other religions, they have their own recipes. They teach things their own way. And I'm sure they're all good things for you to follow. So we go to this desert, to this arid and dry place, because we don't follow what we should follow. We don't follow the laws that are in our consciousness. And that's why we end up in the desert. And when we are there, it's hard. It's difficult because we are alone. We are within ourselves, and we don't know what to do to get out of there. So life is like this. Suddenly, there is a change, an uninvited change. Things that happen unexpectedly. Things that we cannot control. And if we cannot control, we shouldn't blame others. We shouldn't blame ourselves. We have to sit with ourselves, think, and find a solution. We have to reconnect with the sacred that is within us. We have to reconnect with our inner self, with our higher self. But then the desert is for the strong people. Only the strong people can go to the desert and come out of there better than when they went into the desert. Because this encounter with ourselves, because we're going to be facing us, we're not going to be facing anybody else, we're going to be facing us, our feelings, our thoughts. This encounter with us is hard. And your truth demands courage. So we must be willing to recognize aspects of ourselves first that we have never noticed or didn't know that they even existed in us. So, when our projects do not represent the projects that God has for us, He takes us to a way in which our projects can finally match His. So we all know that we have free will. We all know that we can make our own decisions. But sometimes the decisions we make is not in our divine plan, is not in God's plan, but we insist in going that way. So you have to notice, these particular things. And especially you have to notice the gifts that you were endowed with. So if you notice the gifts that you were endowed with by God, you are going to know what you have to do. You're going to know what road you have to follow. And if you follow the correct road, you will possibly not end up in the desert because you were going to the right direction. And our gifts are normally related or directly related to what we have to do, to our divine plan. So this these changes depend on our ability to sink deep within ourselves in such ways that we start getting to know us more and more. And this ability of getting to know yourself more and more is an ability that not everybody possesses, because it takes time, it takes effort, and ability to be able to sit with yourself and look at yourself the way you really are, with your virtues and your flaws. So start asking yourself. You can ask the following questions. For example, what have I done to be here at this moment? Ask yourself, why am I in this desert? Why did I end up here? Why do I hurt so much? What am I doing here? What needs to be changed in myself and in my life? Can this place teach me anything? What is the desert teaching me? How can I reconnect to myself? What are my responsibilities in this whole process? Because we know that with freedom comes responsibility. And everything that we do in our lives, it's our responsibility. It's not our neighbor's responsibility. And who am I? Do I know myself? Do I truly know who I am? Should I sit here a little more and try to find out more about me? about what I like, what I dislike, where I want to go or don't go. What are my gifts? What do I have to do in this planet to be well succeed in a way that I am going to evolve? So Sigmund Freud said, what's your responsibility in the disorder of which you complain? Okay? What is the responsibility? If I have a disorder in my life, it was created by nobody else but me. And even so, when I think that other people cause disturbance in my life, I'm also responsible. I have feelings, I have thoughts that contribute to the whole situation that I'm in. And Rosandro asks us, why should I blame the wind for the disorder it created if I let the windows open? So if I leave the windows open, the wind is going to come in. And if it's a strong wind, it's going to break things in my house. And sometimes when the wind breaks things in my house, it's necessary. So I can realize a few things. I can look at myself and maybe think, I need to change a few things. And that's normally related to moral transformation. Moral transformation is what we have to do. We are here to overcome our flaws and transmute them into virtues. So life only changes around us when our attitudes change, when our feelings change, when our thoughts change. Then life will change around us. But then you say, the problem is so big that I can't. I don't know where to start. And then I tell you, start with the small things. Little by little. We don't make big changes with the click of a mouse. We have to start small. We have to make daily efforts for the changes to happen. And then we can carry on and change other things. So let's say I'm angry now. What am I going to do for my anger to go away? I just can't hold it. I have to express my anger. So what do I do now? I sit with myself in this desert and I take deep breaths in and exhale out and let it go. And think about a feeling that is different from anger to replace that. It's easy? No. It takes time. It takes effort. And people don't want to do that because it's a lot of work. I'm sorry. I need some water. So, Jesus went to the desert and there he lived a period of seclusion, a moment of recollection before the beginning of his mission. And then we have Siddhartha Gautama, Buddha, that took refuge in a forest, and he went through 3 temptations before he became the Buddha. And we have the example of Moses that had to have faith to lead the people of Israel and free them from the Egyptian slavery. So all of these people went to the desert, but from different reasons than we might go to the desert. They went to the desert because they needed to set their minds down. They needed to think and plan and maybe purify their thoughts and keep going. So we all go there one day or another. We all have our sufferings. And I'm sure they suffered for humanity, not for themselves, but they suffered for humanity. And they wanted to help. They had this big compassion. So, what is the purpose with this encounter with ourselves? It's there that God will speak to us and leads us in a new path, to a place we have never been before. But we believe that we will fail. And then we try to act on our own without asking God for help, without trusting Him, without trusting that He is the one guiding our paths. We want to act on our own. We want to use our free will and do whatever we want. All right? You're free for that, but you got to take responsibility for what you do. So, there is a book from Stormy Omertian, and he says, we try to act on our own because we find that dependence is a sign of weakness, then understanding that it's a sign of our willingness to allow God to be strong in us. So if we allow God to be strong in us, if we are really aligned with our higher self and listen to it, instead of listening to our selfish ego, then we're going to be able to move forward. And that's why it's very important to have this encounter with ourselves. It's hard, but it's important. And in this book, The Power of a Praying Life by Stormy Omertian, he brings this beautiful paragraph that says, learning to walk with God is a process. Every time we think we know how, God leads us to a new place where our old tricks don't work. In fact, it may seem that we have to learn to walk over again. And in a sense, that's right. When we step into an unknown territory, we're soon reminded that if we walk by ourselves, we'll trip over. However, when we held in the hand of God, we fly. He wants us to drift for much above the limitations of life of our own being. He wants to take us to places where we ever were and where we can't reach without His help. That's such a beautiful paragraph that the author wrote here. So we have to have this trust in God, in the universe, in the good energies that surround us, in the good spirits, in our guides and guardian angels. So there are some objectives in the desert, in the soul. Like, there are a few things that we can learn when we are in the desert. So the first one, it develops patience. Because, we're there. There's nobody to rescue us. Nobody will come for us. We'll have to wait. If we don't want to make things, we don't want to rush things, and we can't, because transformation is a process, and like I said, it's step by step, and you have to start small, then you have to develop patience. Second one, it develops gratitude. So when we get to that point, we start thinking about the things we have or had and we don't have anymore, of the people that loved us and are no longer with us. We're going to thinking about the job we had but we were never thankful for. So we start developing gratitude in the desert. Brings personal knowledge. So if you really, really are willing to get to know yourself, you will. Unites you with God, because it's in these moments of desperation, in these moments of solitude and loneliness, that we remember that there is a God above us. And when we unite with God, we uninstall individual things, like removing the masks of the ego. And we deconstruct the psychological characters. Okay? So all related to our ego. The illusions and immature dreams fall to the ground. Turn your backs on all the people who are no longer contributing to our growth. So that's simple. You know, sometimes we go towards a path and people start distancing themselves from us, or we distance ourselves from them. And that's a natural process because our paths are no longer aligned. And then each one of us have to go to a different direction. Get rid of behaviors that are not compatible with your project of life. So if the behavior that drove me to the desert is no longer useful to me, then I have to start eliminating this behavior so myself will be compatible with the project of my life. Take you to higher levels of consciousness. It's like meditating every day and connecting with the higher realms of light. And then, as you go, you can reach different levels of consciousness. Give us the real dimension of who we truly are, because there are no masks. Everything falls. The face of the ego, the masks of the ego. And the ego have to be in service of the higher self and not the opposite way. Shows our insignificance, but also our greatness as God's children. Because we are not the big shots that we think we are. We have a lot to learn. Invites us to change our perspectives of life. If we started talking about perspectives of life, that gives a whole different lecture. But every one of us says things differently. And sometimes those perspectives are old-fashioned or not necessary anymore for our paths, so we have to start changing them. Brings us to the total dispossession of ourselves. And this is a dip in a meditative path, which is the path paved by all the great spirits that started a great transformation on the planet and in themselves. So if we really want to evolve, we have to grow through these steps and develop all this in ourselves so we can grow. So the great purpose of God is the transformation of souls. So God has a project for our lives, which is beyond our expectations. And we have to trust Him. So why is it so hard to change and improve. And that is scientifically explained. So if we look at our brains, for example, it's a wonderful organ. Our brain is magnificent. So if you are listening to me, if you see me, if you understand me, that means that your brain is working properly. Your brain has a structure that are key parts for functioning of certain organs. And here we see the neurons making the connections and then the whole brain. So it's a wonderful machine that we have inside our heads. But there are a few things that we have to know about it, okay? So this, we have a description of certain parts of the brain, and the ability to make decisions is performed by the prefrontal cortex or frontal lobe. So if this is altered, then we're not going to make rational decisions. We're not going to make decisions that are good for us. So if the cortex is inhibited, we're not going to function well. So let's say, for example, when you are in love, your cortex is inhibited. You act in a different way. And sometimes you don't make the best decisions. Okay? Another way that your cortex can be inhibited is when you drink too much alcohol. Then you inhibit your cortex. And when that's inhibited again, you don't make good decisions. Okay? So what does that have to do with this process of change? Because sometimes we inhibit our cortex and we have trouble functioning and thinking clearly so we can make the necessary changes that we need to move forward with our lives. Okay? So this way it's difficult to put ourselves in another place and in our perspective to understand what's going on and understand other people's perspective is a little blurry. So beliefs and habits. We all have beliefs and we have habits, okay? But what is harder to change, the beliefs or the habits? So let's make a comparison here, okay? So in the column of beliefs, we have money doesn't bring happiness, God punishes the sinners, I'm not good enough, time is money, life is hard, people are. Okay, those are all beliefs that we may have. And then we have the habits: smoke, use of drugs, live a sedentary life, be a pessimist, alcoholism. Okay, which one is harder to change? So the human being does not like to spend time and energy to think about those things or to change anything. Like everything for the human being has to be in the comfort zone. Like being in the comfort zone is the best place where we can be. Okay? So these two things, but the beliefs that we carry within ourselves are very hard to change, depending on the belief that we have. The habits are hard as well, but you may overcome them easier than the beliefs that we have. And like I said, for us to check on ourselves and see how we're doing and see why I'm acting in a certain way or doing something in a different way today than I did yesterday, it takes a time to self-reflect, to think, to analyze, and that spends energy and that spends time, and I don't have all that, so I don't do it. Okay, so I stay in my comfort zone. So the brain has a huge difficulty making behavioral change. Right? So, and then your mind is not stable that way. So we have some patterns of behavior, okay? These patterns of behavior, they become habits, and they also lead us to self-deception, okay? So change means to break habits, and that's very difficult, like I said before, to break a habit or to change a belief. It's very difficult. So what do? Okay? We have to focus on what triggers that. So let me give you an example. This guy works hard, works the whole day, leaves the house in the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, comes back at 9, and then when he gets home, he puts his briefcase on one side, lies down on the sofa, stays there for a few minutes, and then he's hungry. And then he goes, looks in his fridge, there's nothing there. He calls the pizza place and orders a pizza in, and he eats the pizza. Okay, and then he complains that he needs to lose weight. He doesn't know what to do to lose weight. So what does he have to do? He has to pay attention to his habits. He has to look, okay, all right, I know I order pizza, but if I don't have anything at home, what do I do? So the most important thing here is, what triggers the situation of ordering pizza? Okay? It's the fact that he gets home, he throws his briefcase on one side and lies down on the sofa on the other side. So that triggers the laziness of like going to the supermarket, and getting something healthy to cook in the house. Because he could come from the office, stop by in the supermarket. If he knows there is nothing, grab something healthier, go home and eat. No, but it's easier to get home and call the pizza place. So we have to focus on the trigger, what leads you to the habit, and then add a new behavior. Instead of this guy getting home first and lying down, no, go to the supermarket, buy fruits, vegetables, go home and eat them. All right? So we have the possibility to change, to grow, and to innovate. But again, it takes effort. All right? So only changing our actions will be able to improve our lives effectively. Otherwise, we're going to go into self-deception. All right? So only when we leave the comfort zone and do something, then we're going to see concrete results in our lives. All right? And there is no doubt about it, okay? We doubt ourselves. We don't know. We have the possibility of doing things, okay? And derived of this possibility is the freedom of doing so, okay? And doubt is something of the 21st century because we live in this fast pace. We have to do things fast. We have to rush to the next meeting. We have to learn this. We have to learn that. And we have all of this array of things in the internet that we have to learn, and we don't know how to handle it. And then we are overwhelmed by all of that. But we have to keep going, in this fast pace. And then we start doubting ourselves. We start doubting that we have the capacity, that we have the way of doing things, and that we don't have to learn everything at once. All right? So now, as an example, imagine that a man would magically sleep from the year 1100 until the year 1300. Okay? And then when he woke up in the 1300, he would probably recognize everything that is around him. Okay? Because it didn't change much between the 1100s and the 1300s. It didn't change much. But now imagine this man magically sleeps in 1980, and he wakes up now in 2020. And then I look at him and I say, oh, send me a WhatsApp. And he would look at me and say, a what? He wouldn't know what I'm talking about, because technology developed so fast that we can't keep up with it. But we don't have to keep up with everything. We don't. We do what we can, and we do it little by little. Today I'm going to learn WhatsApp. Tomorrow I'm going to see how Instagram works, right? And then I'll go. So this book is very interesting, from Joseph Campbell, The Power of Myth. And he brings this paragraph here that says, we like symbols because they are the representation of power, of tradition, of continuity that can be translated into the power of myth, for they created security. Okay? So we follow our culture, we follow the beliefs that we have, we follow things that we learned when we were little, and then we keep that same pattern without making the necessary changes, because we believe in the power of myth. We believe in what they represent in our lives. But what we have to have in mind is that everything is impermanent. Nothing is permanent. Everything is in transformation. Okay? There is no eternity for things. The reality of everything is change. And if everything changes, if the world changes, if nature changes, we change too. If I look at myself today, I can tell you I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I'm not. I know I've changed. I don't know if it was for good or for worse, but I changed. So nothing is permanent. So what is change? Why do we avoid change? Because there is something new over there that I don't know. There is something unknown. I don't know that path. I don't want to learn that. I don't want to open my mind for that. And then I stay in my comfort zone. But for how long am I going to be able to be there in the comfort zone until the desert reaches me? And then I'll have to change. So don't fear the unknown. Have your mind open. And that's what we need nowadays. We need people to know that there is something else outside there, that there is life after death. Don't fear to say that, because that is the truth. We have to keep our minds open. And don't fear it. Don't fear the change. Don't fear the new. Don't fear the unknown. Get out of your comfort zone. And then this yogi brings this beautiful sentence, or beautiful sentences. Accept, deliver, trust, and be thankful. Wishing incessantly prevents us from seeing the beauty of the place where we are. So if we keep wishing and wishing, we don't see the beauty where we are. We're not thankful. We're not grateful for the present moment. So awareness is what we need. Be in the present moment. And we know that according to psychology, living in the past causes depression. And living in the future causes anxiety. So let's be aware. Let's be in the present moment. St. Augustine tells us that only the present exists. The past is a memory, and the future hasn't arrived yet. So this is all we have, this moment. So enjoy it. Enjoy the ride. Enjoy the life. Enjoy your surroundings. Appreciate it. Look at it. Be happy. I didn't have that cover for the book in English, so I put in Portuguese, but the translation is The Spiritual Cure of Anxiety. And it says, when we recognize that the unpleasant distress we are going through was caused by ourselves, we open the possibility of turning all unpleasant situations into opportunities for inner growth. Although paradoxical, when the spirit recognizes its fragility, it creates strength. For in recognizing its insignificance, it surrenders itself to the divine force and strengthens itself for the inner growth movement towards the existential purpose, because it takes a lot of inner strength to be able to accomplish the purpose. Most people act on impulse to control the uncontrollable, the world around them, others, and time, producing with it much insecurity, impotence, anxiety, irritation, anger, and etc. So all of this wish of controlling things around ourselves creates the emotions and the situations that will take us to the desert. So let's avoid that. Let's be in the present moment. Let's be thankful. And for that, we need flexibility. So cultivate flexible thinking, which allow us to admit the possibility that things can be different from what we think they are. Mental rigidity brings diseases and prevents the encounter with the self. So, being happy is to be malleable to the invitations that life makes to love. The key to happiness is tolerance to oneself and awareness of our own limitations. This is a very important point that Adenauer Novaes brings us in his book, Happiness Without Guilt. Happiness, the key to happiness is tolerance to oneself and awareness of your own limitations. So when we get to this desert and we finally realize that we have limitations, it hurts. It hurts because we're not prepared to look at ourselves. But let me tell you something, it hurts. But don't blame yourself, because we are all apprentices. We are here to learn. And we're going to make mistakes. We're going to make lots of mistakes. But what do we have to do? Do we keep making mistakes? Yeah, we will, not because we want to, but because we are imperfect. So when we make those mistakes, we acknowledge them. And then we look at ourselves with compassion. We hug ourselves with compassion. And we say, I made a mistake, but I'm going to make better next time. I'm going to make changes. And I can do it. So we have to have this tolerance with us. Not only with others, but with us. Because sometimes we help friends, we help family, but we don't help ourselves. Because we are not compassionate with ourselves. So, when I was writing this lecture, putting together this lecture, I had this insight, this inspiration. And I wrote something that could be said it's a poem, and I'm going to read it for you. So that was written in 2017 when I first presented this lecture. And then it says, soul, callous soul, fiery soul, persistent soul. Soul without direction, needing plumb. Soul, eternal soul, beloved soul. Why do you find yourself disenchanted, discouraged? Dear soul, sometimes lost, distracted, she sinks in the desert of herself, being transformed, stirred, regurgitating in order to emerge, rising on the stage of evolution, renewed, inspired, expanded, evolved, walking the curves of life without feeling hurt or troubled. So, my soul, you will always be unique. I love you. I love you. So, I'm not where I need to be, but thank God I'm not where I used to be. And that's all we have to thank. And the last thing I want to tell you is thank you for your part in my journey. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for watching this. And God bless you today and always. And we're going to end this with a prayer saying, Dear Lord, that art in heaven, we thank you for these days and for all of the days that you have allowed us to be on planet Earth. And may we go through our desert and get out of there more evolved, better, and let our light shine everywhere we go, helping others, being friendly, compassionate with oneself and ourselves. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and so be it. Do we have any announcements? Yes? Are you going to come say it? Or? Okay. All right, reminders. Okay. All right, so let's see what the reminders are. Okay. Describe? Oh, okay. Okay. All right, so we have here live on Facebook every Monday at 7:20 and every Saturday at 5:50. We have a lecture. Okay. That's it? Sorry, guys. Yeah, perfect. All right. Okay, so on Tuesday, we have our meditation at 7 p.m. So tune in for that. And then meeting online only. Okay, so here are some benefits of the guided meditation that is done by Evelyn Souza, Juan Negrillo, Cynthia Cava. Okay. So it's very good for us to meditate and get in touch with ourselves. In the realms of mediumship is a study group in English that happens every Tuesday at 8 p.m. except for the second Tuesday of the month. And next we're going to have Saturday, August 15th, a dinner. Okay, and it's going to start at 5:45, and the payments are made cash or through Zelle. And we're gonna have dessert. Look how beautiful, a pavé, sonho de valsa. How do you say that in English? Have no clue. All right, but it's a chocolate mousse. All right, thank you very much. Have a wonderful night. See you next time.